In tonight's Technology Insider, Chinese sanctions. Next month, Chinese President Xi Jinping will visit the U.S. in efforts to calm rising tensions between the two countries. But could his arrival be met with economic sanctions from the White House? Joining me with the latest is Katie Bo Williams, writer for The Hill. Well, Katie Bo, a new report suggests the U.S. is considering the possibility of issuing sanctions against the Chinese government for hacking. Now, is this retaliation for the OPM hack? Investigators say it was caused by China.
No, White House officials have said that these sanctions will not be a direct retaliation for the OPM attack. What OPM might be is kind of the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of getting critics of using economic sanctions as a response to cyber attacks. It might be the kind of the thing that pushed them towards thinking, well, maybe we should seriously consider sanctions as a policy.
You've got a good point, or the hack that broke the back. If issued, it would be the first time sanctions would be imposed on a country for cyber espionage. Why is the administration considering this form of punishment now, and what could it mean for other countries like Russia?
Basically, we're getting hacked a lot.
Yeah.
I hate to use the expression, the straw that broke the camel's back again, but
it's true, though.
It is very true. The FBI said last month that cyber espionage incidents are up 53% just last year, and a lot of that is China, and the administration can't stay silent in the midst of that sort of proliferation of attacks forever. They're under a lot of pressure from both lawmakers and the public to have some kind of public stance on offensive action. As for what this means for other countries, White House officials have said that these sanctions could apply to other countries like Russia, which is thought to be behind the hack on the Joint Chief of Staff's unclassified email network earlier this month.
Of course, China has maintained its innocence through all of this, calling the accusations that it's hacked into U.S. networks false. Is there any type of trial to establish guilt? What's the process here?
Well, the question is, what is the threshold? How serious does a hack have to be in order to warrant these sanctions? And that's kind of the conversation that's going on right now. The intelligence community, the DOJ, the Treasury, and the White House are all determining what the designations are. You know, how bad does an attack have to be? In April, the president issued an executive order that gave the Treasury Department the authority to impose economic sanctions on entities that perpetrate a significant and malicious cyber attack. And that could be anything from an attack on critical infrastructure like a power grid to stealing and benefiting from intellectual property or trade secrets. So that's kind of the conversation that's going on right now. The administration's going to be under a lot of pressure to be transparent about why it has designated a given entity for economic sanctions. But again, with these sanctions not even being announced yet, that's a little hard to say right now.
And now next month, the Chinese president will travel to the U.S. to meet with President Obama. Cybersecurity issues are on the agenda. Do you expect any kind of sanctions before then or at all? Is this more of a warning than anything else?
This is a pretty sensitive meeting, so I think it's pretty unlikely that the White House is going to come out with sanctions before President Xi's visit this month. A White House official has said that this visit might impact the timing of when these sanctions are announced, so the White House may very well say, do we really want to impose these sanctions right before President Xi gets here? Let's maybe hold off until afterwards. But it's unlikely to have an impact on whether or not the sanctions come on board in the first place. That decision-making process is a broader question than I think one state visit.
All right, before you go, let's look at the big picture. The U.S. has yet to find an effective way to deal with state-sponsored cyber attacks. Are economic sanctions the answer, or should more be done?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question. Yeah. There's a lot of risks associated with imposing economic sanctions on a country that we have as deep of economic ties to as we do with China. The Chinese government may very well turn to counter-sanctions, which it would make it very hard for American interests to do business in China. Some people would say that they already effectively do this with economic policies that are preferential to domestic companies, but it's still a serious possibility. It also might trigger an escalation of the cyber conflict between the U.S. and China. if OPM taught us anything, it's that U.S. networks are vulnerable and Chinese hackers have both the wherewithal and the sophistication to infiltrate them and potentially do some serious damage. So there's a question about whether or not we want to poke the bear, essentially. So
poke the bear because the bear's already hurting. I mean, their stock market is crashing. China's having some economic pressures, so we've got to be careful what we do and even how Wall Street here would react.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, the high-level question here is how do you create a deterrent against cyber activity without invoking the law of unintended consequences? And I think there's no real consensus on that yet.
It's good to get your insight. Katie Bo Williams, writer for The Hill.
Thanks. You so much.